Hey, all, I'm Andy Larson with the Salt Lake Tribune sports team here with Jason Patacchio, our Utah Utes beat writer. He is fresh back in Salt Lake City from the Rose Bowl yesterday after Utah's 43-10 win over the UCLA. First of all, an incredible performance from the Utes, to get a 33-point win in a game that they were only favored by 5. There's so much we want to break down, but I think most of this podcast, let's focus on kind of the offensive end, because I think that was what was so different for the Utes than kind of what we're used to.
Yeah.
And obviously, number one, that starts with Devin Dampier. You know Devin well. You've interviewed him multiple times during fall camp. You've talked to his high school and youth coaches. What stood out to you about this performance, and what do you make of Devin Dampier through game one?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly impressed. I think we've all heard, Kyle Whittingham say that he's, a true dual threat athlete. He has that it factor in leadership. And I think both of those were showcased at different points during the game. Obviously, Dev lit up the stat sheet. I mean, 3 total touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, 2 passing, 205 passing yards and almost 100 rushing yards. So he almost had the trifecta just there. But, he was making plays at every point of the field, the read option, RPO, rollouts. He was just making throws that Utah fans, I'm sure, were really impressed by. He had the long ball, he had short intermediate throws, he was, doing stuff on the move. And so just really impressive performance. And then, afterwards, I have my game story coming out tomorrow morning. But, you know, Dev's kind of a guy that doesn't, want the spotlight on him. And I don't think he's ever going to be that way. There was a post game scene where they do the Utah man, you know, um, like the song after the game, and a bunch of cameras were around, and Devin was like nowhere to be seen. He was just like in the middle of the chaos. And I asked him just after the game, did he feel like if it was a statement game for him? What was his reaction to Matt Leinart, who's USC's 2004 Heisman winner? Comparing him to Kyler Murray, who's, from my neck of the woods. He kind of brushed it off and just said, he cares more about what the team and his offensive line and his quote unquote boys care about him. And so, I think obviously it's one game. But, I think if Devin continues this path, 200 passing yards, close to 100 rushing yards, I think the sky's the limit. And I think Matt Leinart said it best. I mean, he could be a dark horse Heisman candidate. So really impressive from the quarterback for sure.
Yeah, midway through the game, I believe he was the 15th ranked player on FanDuel's Heisman list right now, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you can get plus 3,300 odds for Devin Dampier winning Heisman, which I'm not sure, certainly it's got to be really exciting for Utes fans.
Right.
We know last year the Utes had the worst quarterback situation in the Power Four by Pro Football Focus's PFF's rankings.
Right.
Now, it's not just that Devin Dampier is a average quarterback, is just a replacement level guy to make the rest of the offense work. It does seem like he's got that extra something special. Was there anything that surprised you about beyond what you thought he could do, or is this kind of what you hoped for and expected as someone who covers the Utes?
Yeah, I think I go to the eye test. I obviously we've watched all his highlight tapes. We've seen what he could do against New Mexico, but I think I even was expecting sort of a small drop off just in terms of how his athleticism would affect defenses. And UCLA is a Big Ten defense. We'll learn more about UCLA as the season goes on, but he honestly does remind me of Kyler Murray. I grew up watching Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, and Kyler Murray's just a world-class athlete, but he seriously does have that level of shiftiness. Like, he was juking out linebackers and defensive linemen and cornerbacks, and like just making people miss, even if it was on a read option or if it was in space. There was one play where, he had 2 edge rushers coming off the edge on the right side, and they were backed up, and he rolled out, he tripped, almost got close to having a safety, and then had the most impressive 2-yard rush I've ever seen from a quarterback. And so, the ability to run and just make moves and make plays, really, I mean, it was just surprising, like just how shifty he truly is. And so that was the biggest surprise. I just watching him in person versus the highlights, I mean, it's honestly more impressive than just watching it on YouTube and seeing what he did in New Mexico. So yeah.
Speaking of shifty, I think Smith Snowden was a huge surprise for a lot of Utes fans. Not just that he was playing on offense, because we knew that that might happen. Kyle
Right.
Whitting had said so, but that he got 9 touches on the ball, that he was as involved in the offense as he was,
Right.
and was as productive as he was in doing so. He wasn't the only guy from the defensive end to play on offense. Obviously, we saw Leinart do that as well, Jackson Benny as well. What stood out to you about those performances, and do you think that continues for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think there's two things here. Obviously, if you're a Ute fan, you're extremely impressed with what Smith did. I think Kyle brought it up in the press conference afterwards. He was calling Colorado folks, and I think he even said Dion just about Travis Hunter, how they managed his workload, and obviously Travis Hunter won the Heisman last year. If Smith Snowden can replicate even a fraction of what Travis Hunter did last year, and it seems like he'll probably be able to do that. Just, I mean, he was Utah's leading wide receiver, just in terms of yards, and he was, I guess, quote unquote, the only receiver to have a touchdown last night. Or I mean, it was on a rush, but yeah, I think if you're a Ute fan, you're encouraged, to have a player be able to do that and do it successfully. I mean, the guy was taking jet sweep handoffs. He was, catching passes. He was making people miss. So it wasn't like, it was something that he wasn't able to do. He did this in high school as a two-way player, but I didn't expect him to be as involved in the offense. On the flip side of that, I think it is a bit concerning that Utah's wide receivers were as absent as they were in the play calling and just the offense as a whole. I was expecting a lot from Tobias Merriweather. I think he caught a pass like late in the third quarter or even the fourth quarter. Ryan Davis made an impact here and there, but and Larry Simmons was targeted a few times, but the lack of production there, I think, is a bit concerning, but it's also the first game of the season. So, I would expect somebody to rise to the top. And I think they're still kind of figuring that out. But yeah, those would be my two takeaways. And Lander, I mean, obviously an incredible linebacker. The more you can have him involved on the offense as a tight end, catching touchdown passes, that's just as encouraging as it gets. So yeah.
Yeah, 7 snaps for Lander Barton. And then, I thought with Smith Snowden, it may be a case where he just is more helpful for the offense than for the defense this year,
Right.
because you have a higher replacement level on the defensive end than
Mm.
on the offensive end, right? Like
Right.
you can shift the safeties around and have them play corner or nickel in order to make the secondary work on the defensive end. On offense, you may need Smith Snowden because he does bring something that Ryan Davis and Tobias Merriweather don't. He just has more speed, more shake than I think those guys do.
Yeah.
We may see more of that moving forward. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted out. I was kind of joking at first, but I said Smith Snowden, wide receiver one, question mark, question mark. If this continues, that might be the case. And I mean, he had a high level of production. He was making people miss, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. So yeah.
Yeah, 6 receptions, and then beyond that, it was only Ryan Davis, the next
Yep.
highest wide receiver, with 3. So
Yep.
we'll see if that continues. Now, kind of looking forward, you have the matchup against Cal Poly, obviously at home next week, and then Wyoming after that. Those are should be on paper easier wins for the Utes. What is it that they want to accomplish in the next couple of weeks in order to kind of ramp up into Texas Tech and the rest of the Big 12 schedule?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the wide receivers, I think this is a perfect opportunity for them to kind of experiment a bit more. I mean, there was a lot of experimentation on Saturday, and I mean, we saw them in the jumbo package, we saw them in the pistol, we saw rollouts. I mean, it was as flashy as a start you would have probably wanted as a Ute fan to see from Jason Beck, but I think they're definitely going to want to establish a wide receiver by the time they're facing Texas Tech and Rice Eccles Stadium. They're probably going to want to get somebody going and somebody to be a prioritized, I guess, wide receiver one and wide receiver two. And I think this is an opportunity to do that. I mean, you're facing a lesser opponent, lesser defenses, so it's definitely an opportunity for Devin to maybe take more deep shots, make riskier passes than maybe you'd say against the UCLA. And so, yeah, I definitely would be looking for that. And then on defense, just continued cohesion in the pass coverage. I think that Nico, UCLA's quarterback, I'm not going to say his last name because I will butcher it. So I'd rather spare people the embarrassment on that. There were some slip ups in coverage here and there, but he's a very talented quarterback, obviously. And so I think if you're Utah, you'd like to see better coverage here and there, especially in the middle of the field. Nico was kind of tearing him up here and there. But yeah, those would be my two keys heading into the next 2 weeks for sure.
One last question for me. Going to the Rose Bowl, what was that experience like? And then just Ute fans seemed like they really traveled for this game. How was the atmosphere in the Rose Bowl yesterday?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody, I forget who it was, but they told me UCLA was not in session. I don't know if that's like for certain, but it seemed like that was the case. It was obviously a more sparse crowd, and UCLA crowds have consistently been less sparse than usual. But I mean, it's the freaking Rose Bowl, man. It's a beautiful venue. I mean, I was sending pictures to my mom, just saying like, "Look, mom, it's the Rose Bowl," and she was like, "I'm so jealous you're there." And so it's a beautiful venue. I mean, you have the rolling hills in the background, the orange and blue sunset. I thought it was really interesting that they like lighten the rose blue and yellow to like match UCLA colors. I always thought it was just red and green, and so aesthetically it was just fantastic. The grass was like well manicured. I mean, it's just a beautiful venue. It was fantastic, and yeah, there was a lot of Ute fans, a lot of red. I wasn't surprised at the least. I mean, I was expecting that. I think Ute fans travel well, especially when a game's in the Rose Bowl. So Rose Bowl's fantastic.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of fans who wish Utah was still in the Pac-12 or the Pac-12 still existed and
Yeah,
could travel there on a regular basis because it is a tremendous atmosphere and tremendous location for college football and especially being so close to Salt Lake City.
yep.
Jason, thanks for spending the time with me today. As I know you just had a late night last night after the game, but your coverage has been excellent and we'll have more of it throughout the week. Obviously, we're just getting started with college football season, so be sure to stay tuned to the rest of the Salt Lake Tribune sports team's coverage of the Utah Utes and the rest of the college football slate here at sltrib.com. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. I think that went well.